$165 billion of wasteful spending from the federal government, which sounds like a lot of money, but it won't make a dent in the deficit if there are not more cuts to entitlement programs and mandatory spending. And joining us now is the Deputy Public Policy Editor of OpenTheBooks.com, Rachel O'Brien. Good morning to you. Happy Friday.
Morning.
Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid right now takes up 60% of the federal budget. So give us some of the numbers on what's considered mandatory spending and also the increased interest payments.
Yeah, so President Trump is spending taxpayer money 10% faster than Joe Biden was at this time last year, and that's due to mandatory spending. So since Trump took office, Social Security spending is up $32.7 billion. That's after a required 2.5% cost of living increase. And Medicare and Medicaid spending are up $29 billion. Interest payments take up 13% of federal spending. And the national debt, of course, will only continue to climb from its current level of $36.7 trillion. So the continuing resolution that Congress passed in March to fund the government, that's forcing the government to borrow an estimated $1.9 trillion. So another 13% of spending goes to defense. Trump says he wants to increase that. And then there are all of these other factors beyond the president's control that have contributed to increased spending. You know, he tried to cut the Agency for International Development, and the Supreme Court has stopped that. And Biden also approved a 2% raise for federal employees before leaving office. So there's a lot of spending here that is considered mandatory.
What needs to happen to see some bigger savings?
Yeah, I mean, DOGE has done incredible work to find savings, but the heavy lift is on Congress. They have to make the changes long lasting. So we spoke a few weeks ago about the goal to find $880 billion in savings in Medicaid. So Congress and the agencies can follow existing recommendations. We talked about this. These are things that they've left on the table. They can end billions of dollars in double payments to Medicaid insurers, make sure that does not happen. They can do a better job stopping the $1 trillion a year in improper payments that go to Medicaid and Medicare. You know, they can improve Medicaid demonstration waiver process. That is wasting billions of dollars a year. So that doesn't even include Social Security. That's just Medicare and Medicaid. So we say these words over and over again, you know, cutting waste, fraud, and abuse, because it bears repeating. There's a lot of savings being left on the table, and Congress doesn't need to reinvent the wheel to find those savings.
Meantime, President Trump did release his fiscal year 2026 budget, and that was done late last week. So give us some of the key highlights on that.
Yeah, so that is a proposed $113 billion increase in defense spending, and a proposed $163 billion reduction in non-defense spending. It is a $1.6 trillion budget. That's exactly the same as the last two Biden budgets. So we're talking about these cuts. We're talking about the DOGE savings that they're finding, and it's still the same as the last two Biden budgets because of this mandatory spending. So, you know, as our CEO at Open the Books has said, Congress ought to treat the White House's suggested cuts as a floor, not a ceiling, because we're still where we were the last 2 years.
All right. Deputy Public Policy Editor of OpenTheBooks.com, Rachel O'Brien. Thanks for joining us. Have a great weekend.